Hi, my name is Alana Coates, and I'm a PhD student at the University of New Mexico and a gallery and museum professional. Welcome to New Mexico Fight for Change, a Platica production and creative collective, providing counter-narratives from the corazón of New Mexican artists for visibility, education, and change.
Hi, my name is Pico de Hierro-Villa. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm an Albuquerque artist originally from El Paso, Texas. My artwork is currently displayed at the National Hispanic Cultural Art Museum, and I currently have a solo show at La Chancla that is running until the end of April.
Hi, my name is Ariana Trujillo. I'm a photographer born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My art is inspired by my spirituality and religious beliefs. My goal of my artwork is to impact change, and I'm excited to be a part of New Mexico Fight for Change and learn more about other artists and their work.
Hi, my name is Gerald Lovato. I'm a local artist from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm also an art student at the University of New Mexico. The goal for my work is to create a social impact and create change in my community. And today we are going to have a conversation with some artists about how art can make change in our community.
Hi, thank you for joining New Mexico Fight for Change. Today we're interviewing Josh Lerma.
Hi, I'm Josh Lerma. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas, and I've been in Albuquerque since 2018, but Albuquerque is the second home for me since I have relatives here, and I've been coming here since I was little.
Thank you. So a lot of my work is inspired by a specific Chicanx feminist framework, specifically through oppositional consciousness, a term developed by Chicana feminist Chela Sandoval, and she specifically uses it in a U.S. third world feminist context of how we can really incorporate women of color's voices into the movement. But throughout the year, a lot of queer Chicanx and Chicana artists have really interpreted oppositional consciousness to revolve it around their art making. So for example, meta-ideologizing, and specifically with meta-ideologizing, it is the opportunity for a lot of queer folks to integrate the self into what they're doing, really taking down these dominant ideologies that have really held us back as queer and trans folks in the community. So I'm really curious, since I've seen your art, how do you work against dominant ideologies with your art?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a queer component to my art, as you'll see later on. And I guess tackling one specific piece. There's one piece called I'll Pray For You, Bitch, and it just kind of changes the perspective of the view hen and how she's perceived as this meek. People always pray to her for forgiveness, but in fact it's changing the way she's perceived and making her just mad at you. Maybe she is mad that you did a certain thing, and maybe you should just take accountability in a different way instead of just praying for it and asking for forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. And since you are a queer non-binary artist, I'm really curious on how you really incorporate your gender and sexuality into your art form.
Yeah, that is very apparent. Not that I think sexuality is always what being queer, being gay is. It shouldn't just be about sexuality, although it is an integral part. There are a lot of nods to sexuality, sexual objects in a lot of the work that I do. One of them is this piece called, what's it called? It's called Plug It Up, I think, or something like that. But it's basically a spoof of the El Paso Water Utilities mascot called Willie the Water Drop. And he's basically shaped like a water drop, but I turned him into a butt plug. And just plug it up, hence what butt plugs do.
And with your queer oppositional artwork, how do you see it as fighting against these negative perceptions of queer and trans folks within specifically the Chicanx community?
I think it goes back to it just being out there, the visibility of it. I think when we're all just doing how we as queer trans people, how we just navigate and observe the world, I think that's just radical in itself.
Can you tell us a little bit about your medium of art?
Yeah, most of my art is definitely focused around Photoshop, digital media, I guess as a overlapping over umbrella term. But yeah.
Cool. And one of your pieces is actually up at a local gallery, no?
Yeah, La Chanta.
Yeah, and when is it up until?
It'll be up until May of 2022.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And do you have any questions for that?
Yeah, so I wanted to know if you identify as an artist or just like a creator, and why or why not?
That's such a difficult question for me. I don't know what an artist is. Just kidding. I think I just observe things and I just create how I perceive them. I haven't really, aside from this one show that I did, that's still going on, that's like the first art show that I've done. So I wouldn't call myself an artist, just like as a creator, something like that.
And out of all your artwork, what is your favorite, and which one was your favorite to create?
Ooh, my favorite piece that I've created so far. I did a little, in the beginning of quarantine, around October, around there, I kind of fell into this rut because I wasn't going out, and obviously it was quarantine. And I was just thinking about, like, how am I perceived? If I'm not going out, the only way people are perceiving us is through social media. And so it's just like this whole concept of like perception and projection. And so I did several pieces, 3 of which I sent to you, but one of them I turned myself into like this snuff film type of like gore. So it was basically get me out of you. And it was just like me holding a piece of my brain out. But it's really gory, but I don't know, it's just like, God, like sometimes those perceptions of like that, like one perception of you, some person will hold for the rest of your life. And so I think that's kind of scary because like judgment and stuff, we all judge, but it's like, God,
Right.
That's like something people hold.
Yeah. And kind of going back to what you said about seeing Albuquerque as a second home, but also being from El Paso, since I'm also from El Paso, a lot of my borderland identity is incorporated into my artwork. So how do you incorporate both your Albuquerque identity and your borderland identity into your artwork, or do you even do that?
I think I do a lot of spoofs in the artwork that I do. For instance, I did this one piece called, it was a spoof on Taco Cabana, but it's called Taco Cabrona. And it was basically reimagining like the font and just like the signage of Taco Cabana, turning it into like this like sugar like strip place. And it's like Taco Cabrona, the original Mexican puta. And so yeah.
Yeah, and you use a lot of these terms like cabrona and puta. So do you personally identify as a feminist and or recognize the work that Chicana feminism has really created in allowing us to really express ourselves through our art?
Definitely, yeah. I think a lot of the stuff I've done being brought up by strong women, even non-binary presenting femmes or just femmes in general. I think it's very, what's the word? Just very influential in the stuff that I do.
And I think that's about all the questions I have. Do you have anything else for Josh?
Yeah, just one last one. Which of your works do you think is most powerful to you? And then if you could tell me what you think is most powerful to like your audience, like do you think how they would say, oh, this one is definitely powerful to me, but you may have a different one?
I think the most, like the intimate one for me that's like meant a lot to me was like the whole series on projection perception. So there's this one piece that I did where I turned myself into like this amoeba, like just being scrutinized under a microscope. I have fun creating that, and I think a lot of people, based on the comments on Instagram, like related to it. So I think that also reached like a broader audience as well.
So that one goes both ways.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you. And before we end, do you want to give a quick shout out to how people can be introduced to your art, or if there are any artists who do your specific medium and how they can get started, or any words of inspirations for young queer trans Chicanx folks who are really interested in incorporating the self into their form of art?
That was a lot. So I guess one way to reach me is through Instagram. My handle is mijito_mojito. And so I guess going back to getting into graphic design, Photoshop seems intimidating, but once you know where the tools are on the interface and you know how to like what they do, go wild. Like it's literally like the only advice I can give you for that. When it comes to like, I guess trying to queer people, just like you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, and you should just like be yourself. And just push it. Boundaries, everything.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You guys ready?
Always.
Hi, I'm Gerald Lovato, and we're back with New Mexico Fight for Change. And today I have a couple artists with me to have a conversation. To my right, we have Vicente. He's the local artist and santero here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And to my left, we have Crystalynn. She's do you want me to say your last name?
It's long. Maestas Romero.
Do you want me to just say Crystalynn? What do you go professionally? What do you go by?
Crystalynn Maestas Romero.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about how art can create change in the community. One of the goals with my work is I'm really just trying to tell my story, because I feel like people who grew up here, our stories aren't getting told anymore. And I think it's important for artists to speak up and share with the world who we are. And in this way, I'm trying to make a social impact with my work. And with the violence and the drugs and the suicide, everything that's happening in New Mexico right now, something needs to be done. And I intend to try to investigate that, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that. So I know that I have personally been impacted by what's going on in our culture, but what are some of the ways that you guys see that's happening in our community?
Like how do, well, I think one of a bunch of thousand things that are going on is I don't think that a lot of the youth have a lot of things to do out here. There's not enough things for kids to get involved in that don't cost an arm and a leg. There's not enough funding going into places, even like 508 Warehouse, that actually helps kids in the community. Like there isn't enough money going into those kind of programs to get youth doing art, doing some form of art, because there's plenty forms of art. There's music, there's karate's art, you know
Martial
what I mean?
arts.
Martial arts,
arts.
you know what I mean? Whatever. But there isn't enough of those things that are being funded to help kids in underprivileged communities.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Crystalynn. I think what comes with that, like me being more, into the arts, is that, I don't think we're taught the importance of what art is in, in the communities that we come from. And I think that people don't take the impact that art makes seriously here.
Yeah, I would agree. Some of the stuff that we've been studying in class, in our Latinx art history class, we're learning about the Chicano movement and how they have used art. I mean, in history, throughout history, art has been used to push every movement forward throughout history. And that's one of the things that I want to bring up today is like, what are some things do you guys think that we can do as artists to help create a movement for change?
Well, for me, like even with the characters that I create, it's like almost like how the homies were, right? It was like, I loved the homies because I connected with it. Like I knew somebody who looked like Flaco, or you know what I'm saying, who looked like Tiny, or you know what I mean. That was my I connected with that because it was who I was, and there was a positive thing coming out of it. I used to love to go get fake tattoos out of the 50-cent machine those all came from California, you know what I mean? And I didn't really know a lot of artists here, really, like personally I didn't, you know what I mean? And so now that I'm like seeing more of that, even just wall art, like it's so inspiring. Even my daughter, she just recently did her first mural, and it's the same thing that you're saying about Chicano, like just being able to know who you are and paint that on the wall for everybody to see. You know what I mean? And like know your culture, and so people could see the positive things about our culture. It isn't all blood and negative things, and we're not all just killing each other. There's things that are positive, that our family come from oppression and all these different things that we come from that has caused all this craziness and chaos, but being able to connect it in a positive way, you know what I mean? Like our food and our music and the way that we do things, you know what I mean? Like just whatever, and being able to put a positive twist on it.
Well, speaking about music, I went to see one of your gigs last night at Sister Bar, and what I noticed about your guys' music is pretty much every song had like a positive message behind it. How important do you think it is for you to continue to like spread this positive message with your music?
It's extremely important.
I'm sure it's why you do it.
And even when I used to do it, I went to like different places like Desert Hills and all this stuff, and I did a lot of my music for at-risk youth. And to me, that's where I could perform for 1,000 people, but when it was like for them, it was like they were hearing the words. A lot of times, even performing last night, a lot of people aren't really hearing what I'm saying, you know what I mean? So it's just like the vibe. They're feeling the music and they're having a good time, but every lyric that I say has a deep meaning to it, you know what I mean? It's all about going through things and coming out of them, or spirituality. Like it all has something to do with healing, you know what I mean? And so I definitely think it's important, even if it's in poetry or whatever, and even if it isn't me, I've passed it on to my kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Vicente and I actually, we met in San Diego, and it's funny because I'm out in San Diego in Barrio Logan, and one of my homies out there, Ricardo, he was like, "You're from Burque?" He's like, "I know another artist from Burque that's here," and he's like, "I'm gonna have to link you." So we linked out there, and we ended up back here. Vicente, I want to know a little bit about, like, what do you think the importance is of place when it comes to art? Like, how has your art changed being back home and actually being able to channel, like because I know for me, being here, I'm able to channel just the air, the energy. I put it all into my work. How has it changed for you being back home?
It's changed quite a bit. You don't realize how much support you need as an artist when you're going through your, questioning why you're an artist, or, even if you need a meal, you have family here. Like you said, the air here is different. The bosque is different. The people here are different. Like you have this connection to people, whether you realize it or not. Being back home, allowed me to really be prideful about the place where I come from. Living in San Diego and LA, you're always taught here, like, the grass is green on the other side. So you kind of take this where you're from for granted. And for me, coming back home made me realize this is the greener side. This is the better thing for me in not only my art practice, but the idea of regaining, the idea of storytelling, how we're going to tell the stories of our lives, and how we're going to tell our story through creating, how we're going to tell our story through food, through music, and you just start to absorb all these things that, that you're told for many, many years if you're from here that there's nothing to be prideful about. So being back home and even meeting Gerald in San Diego was like that chance to be back home in somewhere where you're not familiar with, but you can have a connection with, because there's these similarities. But there's no place like home.
Yeah, it feels good to be back. Earlier I was talking about the Chicano movement, but back around those same times, there was an organization called the Young Lords who did the same thing for the Puerto Ricans, and they teamed up with the Black Panthers, and they use art in a lot of different ways, like with posters, and also they did this news publication. But I think today, like the new news is going to be social media. So like, what are some things that we can do as artists, like on social media, to like try to create some type of impact, change, try to bring these artists together to tell their stories and try to come up with some kind of solutions to these complicated issues that we're dealing with in our culture.
I think that there's like probably a bunch of different solutions, especially because we're all different kind of people. You know what I mean? Like we were just talking about how it's hard for our generation to connect with the generation after us. Their world is so different. You know, like we didn't come from a social media.
Yeah, we're Generation X.
Like we played outside. Like we got, you know what I mean? Like I could walk into a room like of youngsters and they're like talking on the phone. You know what I mean? Like they're all in the same room chilling and on the phone. You know what I mean? We were outside playing tag and trying to kiss and, you know what I mean? Like having all these different kind of experiences. So I think that like it's gonna take different generations to reach, to be able to find out and have like that kind of dialogue between different generations. And it's hard for me like to accept a lot of things, and even just I'm old school in a lot of ways, and my son, you know, we have a lot of conversations that sometimes I'm just like, I don't even want to hear it. It's too crazy for me. You know what I mean? But then I'll sit back and be like, all right, look, this is the world, and this is the thing that I'm gonna have to get adjusted to. But I think it's all about learning how to respect each other, learning how to love each other, learning how to be compassionate for each other, no matter what walk of life we come from. We see our brothers and sisters on the streets, addicted to drugs, all that stuff. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of kindness, you know what I mean, that we haven't forgot about them. You know, like we had this guy the other day passing by, and I was like, well, what would you do? Like he's pumped about us opening our business, you know, and I'm like, well, what would you do if you opened a business? He's like, oh, I'm too far from that, you know. I'm like, you're really not. You're really not. You're a couple of decisions away from doing anything you want. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about choices. We all make choices that lead us in whatever direction. So I think it's just being open enough to say, okay, like, how do we help our community make choices to better themselves or inspire hope in people by doing it ourselves? I can't tell somebody how to run a business without running a business.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I want to do with my art. Like I hope to inspire by sharing my story and letting people know that I understand, like other people have been through it. And I feel like other people need to do it too, and that's what this show is about. It's we want to open this up as a community forum for everybody to have a voice, because I mean it's important. It's going to take all of us to make changes in our community. And it's important for us to come together, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're going to continue to have these conversations, and hopefully you can join the fight. #NM Fight for Change. And till next time, I want to thank Crystalynn Maestas
Romero. I'm a junior.
I'm Gerald Lovato, and thank you for being with us today, and till next time.
Bravo.